What's the craziest thing you've ever seen at work? I'm fairly certain that a guest came into our zoo with the intent of receiving a golden shower from a lion. For some backstory, if you've never seen those videos of lions pissing on zoo guests, you should look it up. Males can spray urine 10 plus feet through the caging. It stinks worse than you could ever believe. We've had guests puke before when they got sprayed and is just about impossible to wash off. You don't want to put water on that, trust me. We even have signs up warning people that lions can spray urine. One day, this guy comes in during the morning and first place he goes is to the lion exhibit. Stands 5 feet from the bars. I caution him about the urine and he ignores me. Half an hour later, I notice he's still right there, standing almost still. I tell him I'm not kidding, they spray through the bars sometimes. He nods and backs away a bit. 10 minutes later I find him closer to the bars than he was before. I think okay, whatever, not my fault if you get peed on. I told a couple coworkers about this guy as we went about our morning chores. Another keeper told me, half an hour later, that he got sprayed by a lion. Apparently he was pretty calm about it and didn't start retching like most people do. Walked straight out of the zoo and back to his car, drenched in lion urine. I was a manager at a small casino running a blackjack tournament. I watched a man have a heart attack before my very eyes. It was the end of the round for that table. The man advanced to the next round. As soon as the hand was over and was about to congratulate him, I saw the exact moment that he realized that something was wrong. He grabbed his chest and his lips instantly turned gray. It just so happened that the person sitting directly to his right was respiratory nurse. She realizes immediately what's happening and throws him on the ground and starts CPR. She took full control of the situation like a hero in the movies. It was horrific and awe-inspiring at the same time. The man made a special visit to the casino 2 weeks later to let us know that he was okay. To me, this wasn't crazy because I watched a man almost die. This was crazy because I saw the exact moment that he realized that he was in trouble. I saw the exact moment the nurse's instincts and training kicked in. I'll never forget it. There was a fire in the store I work at, towards the back of the store. We were getting everyone to evacuate and a woman would not leave. She told me that since where she wanted to shop was not on fire, if she wanted to assume the risk of bodily injury that I could not stop her. I had to try to balance not losing my shit on her with getting her to leave. Luckily an older authoritative firefighter had just walked by and heard her, and he turned around and physically picked her up and bitched her out as he took her to the exit. It was as if the retail gods finally cut me a break. He did what we all wanted to do. It was absolutely glorious. We were unloading some equipment from trucks. I was off to the side putting things away when I heard someone making really weird noises followed by loud bangs. I went over to the loading area to find a coworker pretending to be a monkey in the truck and throwing barrels down the ramp at another coworker who was jumping over them. Funniest thing I've seen in years. Someone took a shit in the final hole of putt-putt. I was working at a car dealership and was standing outside with my friends drinking coffee on a Sunday morning. All of the sudden we heard this sound like thunder and looked up to see an old Pontiac flipping end over end into the lot. It came crashing into a row of Yukons we had up on racks and knocked them over like dominoes. Funny thing is that the guy driving the car was drunk as hell and climbed out of the wreckage without so much as a scratch. I'm a bartender and work a fair amount of weddings. The wedding party was fucked up before the ceremony and it only got worse during cocktail hour and the reception. Sometime after dinner we heard voices raise, shouting and cussing commenced. 2 bridesmaids were having a spat. Right in front of all the guests, including the bride and groom. Unfortunately they were bickering in front of the wedding cake. So when reason flew out the window and good sense was doing shots they began pushing each other, which escalated to hair pulling and blows. Obviously people began trying to break it up. Unfortunately in the middle of the scuffle one of the bridesmaids was pushed forcefully into the cake table. She fell over this 5-story perfectly decorated cake. Demolished it. Never seen something so terrible and yet hilarious at an event. One of our machines broke on my shift. Roughly 10k pounds of metal went crashing 10 feet down, landing about 6 feet away from the nearest employee. I was shift lead at the time and was counting heads making sure nobody got crushed. My heart still races at the thought of that. All safety protocol was being practiced, it was literally just a freak accident. Thankfully nobody got hurt, just shooken up a little bit. I had broken up with my ex-girlfriend. We also worked at the same place, which is a terrible idea. I was young and dumb. She was young and a little crazy. We also lived together in a 2-bedroom apartment. We had planned on getting a roommate to share the rent, but all this happened before we found a roommate. Lucky for that person. Anyway, she cheated on me. Repeatedly. In our spare bedroom. I caught her for the 3rd time and banged on the door again. I suggested, loudly I admit, that we had some things to discuss and consider in terms of our future. She finished with him and he exited. No problems there, I really was never into violence or even mental or verbal confrontation. The next Monday, she comes into work and is an absolute demon. She races up and down the halls shouting at saleswomen, other female associates, the receptionists, and is accusing them all of sleeping with me. None of that was true, all of these women were in long relationships or just friends. There was literally no reason she should think these things. Finally, the office manager calls the cops and has her arrested. A couple days later, she shows up at the apartment to collect her things. She has her new boyfriend with her, and they are just about finished getting all her stuff out of the apartment. She comes up to get the last box. She says, he's waiting in the car. Cool, I say, hope it works out. Anything else I can do for you? She responds. Anything at all? And the madness in her eyes is deep, very deep. So I respond like anyone would, I could use a blowjob. She drops to her knees in front of my couch and does it. Were I older, as I am now, I would have been terrified about what teeth can do to sensitive flesh. But, as I said, I was young and dumb. She finishes, swallows, collects her final box, and heads down to the parking lot. Where she envelops this unknowing guy in a full-blown French kiss with my cum still in her mouth. I never saw or heard from her again. It remains in the top 15 or so bizarre things I have ever been involved in. I don't know what either of us was thinking. I guess hormones can really get crazy. A colleague making jelly shots, yes with alcohol in them, at work during lunch, then putting them in the work fridge to set. I work for the government. Walmart ex-employee here, settle in, I have a few. He has a gun in a holster, Texas, so naturally he's hanging out in sporting goods. Goes to pull his wallet out as I'm finishing getting him his fishing license, and I hear a couple really loud bangs directly in front of me. Dude accidentally blew his foot to shreds because he didn't have the safety on. Next up is when I was moving to AP, Asset Protection, where a fragile-looking old lady is loading cart after cart of those super expensive Dyson vacuums. She just walked out the door with at least 5 of them. We didn't find out the whole weekend, but we found it on the screens in the back that the camera caught. So bizarre. Someone was fired for not spider wrapping them, I believe. I got a lot more, but I'll end with the time a small woman nearly paralyzed a dude with like a judo flip trip thing on Black Friday for getting the last Spider-Man PlayStation. He was alright, minor back injury and concussion, and got his PlayStation. Kind of happened over the span of some weeks or so. One of the managers at my work, not my department, started dating this lady. Lady turned out to be not so good for him because she had a coke addiction and she was using him for money. Long story short, she bled him dry and left him right after. He ended up homeless. He then bought a van off a buddy for cheap and started living behind our building. He had an outlet running under the loading door and everything. That lasted for a couple weeks, but then upper management found out and the guy got canned. I miss that dude. Hope you're doing well, Tom. Brought a motorcycle into the building and did a burnout in the hallway. Scorched a nice hole in the rug. Edit. No, this was not me. I worked at a car wash. They would go into the tunnel, then come out and pull into a 3x2 car bay where we'd do a full-service interior clean while customers waited inside with Wi-Fi, coffee, TV, etc. One day was particularly busy and the bay was full, so we had a couple cars waiting in line to get in. There was one guy, we'll call Tom, probably early 40s, short, Asian, recently hired. He apparently forgot to get the stop button in the tunnel, so a car was getting pushed out and hit the empty parked customer car that was in front of it. He got the customer out, what he said, but they went inside to talk to the manager. Then he tried to fix things by pulling the cars up, but ended up hitting 2 other cars with a customer car, then backing that car into the bushes and wall in the back. He just got out and stormed off while all hell broke loose with a handful of customers' cars being crashed and everything backed up. It was not pretty. I worked in an office with a woman who was definitely high drama. I'm talking to our boss in his office and I hear wailing coming down the hall towards us. It's that sound a 3-year-old makes when he's hurt, wants attention and is fake crying, but somehow louder. I can't handle that kind of thing, so I bail in a hurry and hide at my desk. The rest of this I hear from the source. She reached my boss's office not long after I fled and collapsed platoon style, still bawling. On her way to lunch, she had tripped and fallen in the mud, so her pants were muddy on the knees and she was crying that she had a boo-boo. Our boss's boss took her to the ladies' room to clean her up. This involved the crying woman removing her pants so our boss's boss could try to get some of the mud out of the sink. Crying lady spent the rest of the day gleefully telling anyone who would listen what happened. I still can't comprehend any part of this. When I worked retail in the early 2000s, one of our seasonal employees dropped a TV from ladder height onto a customer's head. It was not a flat screen. Worked in a sawmill and watched a guy cut his hand off. We all spent a couple hours shoveling bloody wood chips out of the conveyor belt. Fun times. Okay, I worked as a spa salon manager for a while. I'll make this as succinct as I can. One day a very professional-looking, well-dressed woman came in for a massage and sauna. She was from out of town, never been in before. During her massage she made some funny sounds and apparently some funny smells. She doesn't say anything or get up or indicate that anything is wrong. After the massage the therapist goes back into the room to discover that this lady has had diarrhea all over the table. We're very concerned about cleanliness and hygiene, so there is a mad dash to clean and disinfect. In the meantime this woman has put on a robe and walked straight into the sauna, where she removed her now shitty robe and sat in her shitty puddle for like 30 minutes. She left the robe and went to the dressing room. She dressed, came out, paid like nothing happened and left. The sauna was shit down to be disinfected. Our poor spa attendant frantically cleaned everything in the dressing room, only then to discover this woman had destroyed a bathroom stall. Shit on the seat, the floor, etc. Spa attendant cleaned it, but the smell was still overwhelming and she didn't know why. Until she found a woman's shit-covered panties in the trash. The end. P.S. Please don't diarrhea on everything in a spa. I mean honestly. I have two and they're both pretty wild. When I was delivering pizza for a really common pizza company in college and got a standard delivery to a place in my town not far away, but kind of isolated and off the main road. Pulled up and outside a big locked gate are two big Mexican dudes with what looked like assault rifles. Before I could turn around one of them walked up to the car and waved at me and told me to wait in the car. The other guy goes over to the gate and opens it. From inside come about a dozen pit bulls who looked pretty mad. Then another big Mexican guy comes out to the car to get the pizza. He hands me a $100 bill for a $15 pizza. I didn't have change. He says to get the bill changed and come back, and in the meantime he's hold on to re-pizza. One of the guards took a picture of my license plate car. I went down to the bank nearby and they made change really quickly. I headed back. He told me I was slow and late getting back. I gave him his change and then he stiffed me on the tip. Needless to say we put a blacklist on this phone number and address and nobody was allowed to take deliveries to them again. Fast forward a few years. Got posted to teach English in Japan for the J program. Ended up in Yamanashi Prefecture near Tokyo. One day pretty early on in my first year was asked to host a couple of experienced English teachers for an overnight English camp we were having for our advanced English class. I agreed. The students ended up staying at some educational center for the weekend, but me and these two other teachers ended up at an onsen hotel nearby in a really nice room. I'm 22 at the time, and the other teachers are in their 40s, so we decide to go have a drink at the hotel lobby bar in the evening. We get downstairs and there are a ton of people milling about in their yukata robes. All are men. They're smoking and talking, joking around, etc. They don't really pay us any mind as we walk into the bar. As soon as we set foot in the bar we knew we'd messed up. The doors close behind us and the entire bar is packed with yakuza, all in robes or half naked, showing their full body tattoos. They're all drinking like crazy, singing karaoke, etc. There are also about 15 escorts who were in various stages of undress, all wearing the same uniform, basically a bra and skirt with nothing underneath. Many are on the verge of being nude as well. We turn to leave without saying a word, but the guys at the door won't let us and point over to a booth where a couple older guys and one really older guy are drinking with a couple of girls. They're waving for us to come over. We politely oblige and they tell us to sit down and then order us beers. I'm the only one of us three who could speak decent enough Japanese, or at least the other guys were playing it like they didn't know any, so I kind of turn into the interpreter for the night. They keep us there for hours. They wanted to know about England and soccer and American football rules. They ask all kinds of stuff about which we like better, American girls or Japanese girls. They offer us a round with the girls they've got there. We are freaking the hell out and keep trying to leave. One of the guys grabs me by the balls and asks how big I'm downstairs. I laugh it off and try to get out of there. Right after they made us sing some show tunes, they all up and leave. On their way out, they invite us to come along and explain what all of this is. We'd apparently stumbled into a Yakuza Japan tour of various hot springs that they are all on vacation together for. They just happened to be staying the same night at the same place as us, but would move on to a different city next day. All just drinking and savoring the local entertainment. They invite us along. We politely decline. One of the guys gives me his card on the way out and says if I ever have any trouble to give him a call and he'll help me out. When all was said and done, we went up to settle our tab, fearing the damage we'd done to our wallets, hoping we hadn't got billed for the escorts. They paid for all of our drinks and we didn't owe a dime. In the end, me and the other two teachers became friends. Haha. They decided not to hold the English teachers overnight after that, though afraid of a repeat. I worked in a clothing store that didn't have a public restroom. The owners told us that under no circumstances were we to take them to the restroom that the employees use. I'd quiet, but they micromanaged and watched the cameras like crazy, so I wasn't about to break that rule. Well, one night a woman was pissed because we didn't have a public restroom, and so she walked to the big trash can we had by the back where we were doing some work and literally sat in it, peed, and walked out. In front of everyone. Like it was nothing. I got robbed my second night working at a convenience store, so probably that. If not, it would be when all of us working close at BK got drunk on 40s and this dude fell through like 10 stacks of bread trays. The weirdest thing for me, hotel front desk, was an old man, easily in his 70s, with his wife and kid, ask me if he could do donuts on our parking lot. No, not the edible kind, I asked. One of my co-workers told me on Christmas Day that one of our elevators was currently off because it had bloody walls. Turns out one of the guests, an already suspicious dude because of the raid he had gotten smashed and beat the fuck out of his girlfriend and the friend they had come with. Dude got arrested, of course. I was working retail at an office supply store when one day two guys walked in and they seemed really nervous. They were just walking around the store. Assistant manager came by and told me to just keep an eye on them. About 5 minutes later another guy came in and it was obvious he was looking for something. He found the two guys and started yelling at them. I think one of the duo had slept with the other guy's sister. The shouting guy grabbed a folding chair and started swinging it at them and chased them for a bit. Guys eventually ran out and the chair-wielding guy was subdued by the assistant manager. Same chain, different location. An elderly guy walked around our store with a torn colostomy bag. Leaked all over the store. My buddy pulled the short straw and had to clean it up. I got too. Little bit of background. I worked at a sandwich place which made their own bread and I was getting in early because I like to do a little longer rise, felt the bread came out better that way. Our location had 2 floors that had to both be accessed from the outside. The downstairs had the washing sink, the walk-in, and storage, where the top floor contained the shop, the proofer, and the oven. We were also located on the downtown mall and had heavy foot traffic. First, I was on vacation for Thanksgiving and had a week off. My first shift after my break was an opener, so I arrived at 6:45 to start the process. I first turned things on upstairs and briefly checked the prep list to see what I am in store for this morning. It wasn't long before I headed downstairs to grab the frozen dough to begin the thawing process. I put my key in the door to the basement and push. I try and push the door, but it is heavy and slams shut in my face. This door is not normally hard to open. I pushed again harder and got it open further, but again it came back and shut in my face. There has to be something blocking the door. So I push again, but this time hold it open far enough to stick my head through. There on the other side of the door was my manager, lying on the ground. This is not the weirdest thing in the world for me because my manager, Phil, pseudonym, was staying with someone who would kick him out randomly, not let him have basic rights like use the house's washer-dryer. Anyways, he would sleep at work sometimes, but usually gone way before work. Phil. Nothing? I try again, this time a little louder. Phil. His eyes shot open and looked at me. Hey man, look. I got to open, you need to get up. I'll be back in 10. I proceed to shut the door and go back upstairs to count the drawer. After a while I come back down, and the door still won't open. I knock and yell, Phil, I gotta get in. But nothing returns my call. Phil. Phil? I push the door open again to the point where I can stick my head through, and there Phil is lying in front of the door. I did forget to mention that his head was against a door, and when I pushed it open it pushed into his head. At this point I start to get worried. I end up forcing the door open just barely enough so I can slip in, and I'm standing over Phil looking down at him. His eyes were closed, but when I yelled his name, his eyes would open and look at me, so I knew he was conscious, but knew something was wrong. I ended up calling the owner, who happened to be on his way over anyways, to drop off a shipment of things he had gotten from the store, and we called an ambulance. Turns out he had drunk way too much the night before to the point where he got pneumonia and had to spend the next 3 weeks in the hospital. Since he was in the hospital, I got promoted to manager. Second is a shorter and maybe sweeter. Working up top we were able to people watch quite a bit due to the amount of foot traffic at the mall. One time a naked man walked around for about 30 minutes. During this time he did a numerous amount of odd things, from standing next to and watching a couple eat their food to trying to pull a tree down. He ended up having the cops called on him and was found a block down in an alley wrapped in a blanket. TLDR1 got promoted. 2 saw a naked guy on drugs. Guy on a new Walmart store worksite dropped acid. He was the main forklift driver. He was the cousin of the CEO of the construction company. Everyone knew, so all of us 60 workers had to just watch out for him.